Mr. Chair, at the beginning of my speech, I do need to respond to what was said by the previous speaker. The previous speaker, who is the chair of the Education Committee, so I would expect that he would have a great knowledge of this piece of legislation and actually address this bill thoroughly. But instead, he spent the whole 5 minutes of his speech firstly attacking my learned colleague Grant Robertson, attacking my colleague Grant Robertson
Look it up, Paul.
about the Royal Society Bill when we are actually here, Mr. Speaker, to discuss the Education Amendment Bill, and actually attacking my colleague Grant Robertson for filibustering, accusing him of filibustering on the Royal Society Bill, but taking 2 minutes of his time on this speech to do that.
Point of order.
Mr. Chair.
Order. Point of order. Tauhenaro.
Mr. Chair, you brought us back to the bill before that member rose to speak, and I'd love to hear something about the bill.
I'll just respond to that. Actually, it's out of order to refer to a ruling by the chair. Members just need to move on. And, I think you've made your point. Now can we get on to Amendment Bill number 4?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The point that was made with regards to capping student services levy, which is what this part of the bill is about, was really in relation to the fact that institutions are struggling at this point in time. And whilst we support the capping of the student services levy, we do know that at some point they are going to have to find the money somewhere to provide the student services that the students need to be able to make it through the degrees that they are studying towards. And so that is the point that we make here. And Mr. Peachy talked about the fact that 17 and 18 and 19-year-olds need to have us have faith in them in terms of their ability to make decisions for themselves. And before I get more thoroughly into this bill, I need to make the point, Mr. Chair, that it is that side of the House that is saying that 16 and 17-year-olds aren't capable of making decisions for themselves, hence why they are proposing the introduction of a payment card so that they have restrictions around what they can buy with their independent youth benefits. So I think before that speaker, who happens to be the chair of the committee, stands to his feet again, he needs to reflect on some of the other legislation, some of the other policy initiatives that his government is putting into place, so that he's not standing up and actually contradicting a whole lot of proposals that his side of the House is actually making, Mr. Chair. Now, moving on back to this bill, as my colleague before me, Grant Robertson, said, this bill does make a range of amendments. What we're looking at here is the fact that student services levy within institutions will be capped, and we're aware that our students, in terms of the fees they have to pay, in terms of the amount that it costs them to study at tertiary level, that this is good in terms of what's being proposed there. Again, I just have to say that it's within the context of what's being done across the tertiary sector that we are concerned. The student services levy, along with the money that's raised through the voluntary student membership, is really important in terms of the student services that are provided. And having worked at the university, I know that it's not just all about academic study and putting on the classes for these students, Mr. Chair, that there is a high level of support that students require, whether it be additional study support in terms of the academic services provided through student learning centres, or whether it be the pastoral care that they require. We can't just say that you've qualified, or that a student is qualified for a tertiary qualification and therefore every aspect of their life is intact and they no longer need any support at all, because that's simply not the case, Mr. Chair. And any good tertiary institution wants to be able to provide that level of service to their students, because at the end of the day it's about supporting them to remain at that institution, and it's about supporting them to actually achieve the academic qualifications that they went in there to actually obtain. Retention and achievement, two of the most important things at tertiary level, next to, of course, prior to that, recruitment. So, Mr. Chair, we do support this. We support the fact that that there will be a cap put on the student services levies. But as we said, Mr Chair, we've got real concerns about what this will mean with regards to student services across the board. We think that this bill does make some positive changes. However, we look at the huge levy rises last year, and we do see that they really were a result of the national government squeeze on tertiary funding. Basically, tertiary institutions had no option but to raise student levies, Mr Chair.
Carmel Sibiloni.
They had no option but to raise student levies in order to raise the revenue that they needed to provide the services that the students required, Mr Chair. So what that resulted in was basically a squeeze on their funding, and it forced institutions to lay off staff as well as this, or pass the buck on to students. So, Mr Chair, I'm not going to take a full second call. I hope that the government side of the House will consider this bill carefully and look at it in the context of some of the other ill-informed decisions that they're making across our tertiary sector. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Very good speech.
Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and may I